Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for tuning in to another episode of the Mindful Constitution podcast. I have a very aligned guest here today, Jackie Lightner of Lighthouse Therapy and Recovery for Women. She is a LICSW licensed clinical social worker, and
Hmm.
we're going to be digging into her story and path to her own healing journey and also the creation of her business, entrepreneurship. So I'm super excited to welcome her to the podcast today.
Thank
Hello.
you, Katie. Hi, I'm so happy to be here.
Yes, girl, I know. This is so fun. Very, very aligned in our missions and message. And I
Yeah.
just love like watching, looking at your website. I was very inspired with everything you're doing and speaking. All of the things you're doing are aspirations of mine. So I'm so eager to pick your brain and just allow you to share and highlight your own zone of genius and wisdom.
Yes, well, I love that. Thank you. Yeah, I would love to, I hope it's my zone of genius. It's whatever it is, it's all I'm doing. You know what I mean? So it's what I know, but it's been so cool. And yeah, I'm so excited to be here and kind of talk about light work and all of those things that you said we're totally aligned on. So it's an honor to be a guest. Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. So I always kind of kick things off with a little bit of a history and background of what inspired you to start light work and
Yeah,
and what gap did you see in women's mental health and recovery that you were trying to fill with your business model and
totally.
if you want to share too about like your own journey there.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's
Great. Dig into the
totally.
messy details. We like this.
Exactly, exactly, Katie. It's all connected too, right? Like I think they kind of go hand in hand. I think to start off, I'm a person in recovery myself, so I've been sober almost 6 years. I'll have 6 years in January, and as a woman who, was exploring sobriety, I think, and for me, like I always think of, I know we have like separate treatments for mental health disorders and substance use disorders, and we call them like co-occurring or dual diagnosis. But like I am kind of in camp. If you've got a substance use disorder, like there's some mental health stuff going on, right? Because like typically we're using substances to cope with something, to cope with life stressors, and certainly there's usually, some anxiety or depression or sadness or just like coping stuff that's going on. So I was dealing with that with my in my own story for sure. I um have kind of I always knew I drank differently and kind of had a interesting relationship with alcohol that was different than my friends. It seemed like I definitely found people, particularly in college. I went to UMass Amherst.
The boom.
So, yes, very not a difficult place to drink alcoholically and to find other people who also drank alcoholically at the time, whether they wound up, being alcoholics or not. It just like really normalized that behavior for me. And coming out of college, I had still kind of all the same stuff I was struggling with. I've always been kind of an anxious kid, maybe like, melancholic, you could call me, where I just think I felt things deeply and intensely. And I didn't know necessarily how to cope or deal with that. And turned to substances as like an easy way to do that. Alcohol, kind of my first drug of choice, other substances are certainly part of my story, but kind of all roads lead back to the booze for me.
Hmm.
And so trying to deal with that and and mind you, I'm going to college, I'm going to grad school, to become a therapist, and I'm kind of like learning about all these disorders and all these things. And there's like a running joke in in school for therapy or social work. I went to social work school, but even for friends that I have that are therapists, that it's like everyone that's like had some trauma or like something happened to them like winds up trying to become a therapist because you're trying to help other people, through something that maybe you felt like you couldn't help yourself through. So I was definitely doing that. And it just my drinking was like okay, but it wound up just being like for many of us, like unmanageable, not serving me, not giving me any positive, it just turned into like all the reasons that I was using it to like cope to ease my anxiety or to ease my feelings or numb. Like it started to just do the opposite. It was creating more issues. It was creating more anxiety on the back end, right? Like I was really falling victim to like all of those things that we hear about and talk about in recovery or in the sober curious world that it just like its intended effect was not working anymore, right? It was actually giving me more of what I was trying to escape from. So through that, worked a bunch of different social work jobs, was still drinking the whole time, kind of ebbed and flowed with my usage of how bad it would get, or how, if I had a little more under control, so to speak, which for me it was never under control. And then eventually, was very fortunate and lucky that I had people in my life that had been sober. I had a boss who was an amazing dude who was sober a long time and kind of pointed out to me, like, you might want to consider like
Yeah.
getting sober because this doesn't seem to be working for you. My father was an alcoholic, is an alcoholic, has been sober many, many years, like 20 years, and so I had like that language and that lens to draw from that. This wasn't like a foreign concept to me, right? Like addiction kind of ran in my family. I knew about this stuff. And so thankfully, eventually, with support of those people, I did get sober and I didn't do like rehab or anything like that. I think a lot of folks that I meet in the industry kind of went that route, right? Of kind of traditional, um, go to detox, go to a residential, like kind of get sober and do it this way. And I didn't do that. I don't know why. I just kind of like it didn't even like occur to me. I was like, I just need to go to meetings. So I took the AA route and I did like 90 meetings in 90 days and wound up getting sober. This was also like right before COVID. I got sober in January of 2020.
Yeah, we got over the same year. Woohoo.
Yeah, like, whew, like kind
In
of a doozy of
July.
a year to get
Yeah.
sober. But also, like, thank God, right? Because
Oh my God. Yeah.
I was like, I think about that often of like, if I hadn't gotten sober when I did, and I was in kind of that height of the pandemic during my like d active addiction, I don't even know what would have happened.
I
So
I just had a few months there because I
it's
couldn't get
hard.
sober till July, and so
Wow.
I had a few months like in the pandemic where I was like day drinking all day, like
Yes,
the
that's
wheels
what I would have
are
been
coming
doing.
up, like woohoo, like no structure. I mean, I was already like an overindulger, binge drinker anyways, but then as COVID hit and it was this collective permission to drink
Hmm.
whenever. I did not need that, by the way. I would gladly have drank in the morning before
Yeah. Yeah.
COVID. But that was like all the permission I needed. And then it kind of gave me that additional push. And there's so much overlap, but I'll get into that once you finish your.
Yeah. No, totally. Like, yeah, that would have been me. I don't know what I would have done. Truly, I think I could have wound up potentially dead, like just
Mhm.
with how, like you said, already didn't need anyone telling me it was okay to drink or not work. Like I was already cool with that. So yeah, so eventually like got sober kind of, and that was like it. I had tried on and failed on my own many times to get sober and control my drinking or only have a glass or only have one. And it never worked for me because I think for me, I identify as an alcoholic and I just wasn't able to do that. So for me, like taking the option of alcohol and just substances off the table, like actually for so many years, I felt afraid that that meant like I wouldn't be free, right? Like it was like restrictive and I didn't have a choice. And it felt very, yeah, like restricting to me. And what I've actually discovered, like through sobriety, is that like just taking that option off the table for me has actually provided me the most freedom I've ever had, right? It's just like I don't even have to think about it. I just don't do it. I don't have to worry about it. I don't have to worry about the control that the substance had over me or thinking about rationing out my wine at dinner so that my husband doesn't get mad at me, like, and instead of spending my time enjoying the dinner, like thinking about drinking the whole time, right? So
Yeah.
all of that has been a godsend. And I think since I got sober, it's just only been up from there. And I think I started to see, so I opened my own private practice, and I was just doing therapy one-on-one with women in 2021. When did I open? Yeah, 2021, I think.
Hmm.
And so I was about a year and a half sober at this point and was loving it. Like I felt so creative, like my creative juices were reignited in sobriety, like all of these things like I thought I couldn't do or wasn't good at, like turned out to just be very muted because of my my drinking, right? And now that I don't have that kind of clouding me anymore, I was like really able to thrive in my creative process and thinking about these things. So I was loving setting up my own business. I always thought I was like not a business person, but I actually love it. I think it's like really fun and interesting. I love marketing. I like the brand. Like I like being able to, get the word out to people. And I loved doing therapy with just women. And I think that's where I kind of really niched down was when I started doing private practice because I was like, I don't know, like there's, some people might say that I limited myself and my like clientele with the ability of how many clients I'd be able to get, but I kind of feel like people want specialists and people want to see people who know exactly what they're going through or have at least some awareness of what they're going through and can actually help them through their specific problem rather than someone that's just like, I can do anything for anybody. So I really niched down into being women's only and kind of started to focus on women that we would consider like high functioning, right? Like seeing a lot of women with high functioning anxiety, high functioning depression, high functioning burnout, where you're doing everything that you're supposed to be doing, right? Like going to the gym, doing everything for your kids, be going out on dates, like going to school or work or whatever it is. Like all of your obligations are met and you're checking the box, but you're inside like really struggling internally or you just feel so stuck or you feel like you're going through the motions or you feel like anything that deviates outside of kind of your scope of like what you are comfortable with produces like severe, anxiety and is starting to manifest in like health anxiety or these other like weird ways that it's popping up because you're not like able to address it in your day-to-day life because you're just kind of so blinders on. So that kind of became like my bread and butter. And then hired Molly Hoops, who's a licensed mental health counselor, LMHC, who I'm also fortunate enough to be really good friends with. And she was working as a therapist in the practice. And that was kind of my goal is I was just going to open like a group practice, just hire a bunch of therapists. And so we could see more and more women or people could niche down even more of like what they were interested in or specialized in so that we could treat those folks. And then this idea of higher level of care, which is what Lightwork is, we're an intensive outpatient program. So we're doing group therapy 3 to 5 days a week, 3 hours a day, is kind of our IOP. And then we now have partial hospitalization as well, which is like 6 hours a day, 5 days a week. Um, Same thing, same format. And so this idea kind of got presented to us through a mutual friend of like, have you guys ever thought about offering this level of care, with your population? So Molly and I kind of thought on that, and we'd had a couple experiences with clients. I had a client in particular who, was a young woman from, kind of an affluent community and super high achieving kid going to college and same thing, checked all the boxes, had all the things on paper. This kid is like a golden child, and but inside was really struggling with some stuff, and ultimately she had wound up in an inpatient facility, for suicidal ideation and came out. And they typically, when people leave inpatient, right, they get set up with aftercare. And typically it's this higher level of care that I'm talking about, like a PHP or an IOP, what we offer at Lightwork now. And she went in and halfway through the day called me and she's like, yeah, I'm not going back in there. Like there's, 50-year-old men in the group that have like very different struggles than what I'm going through. They're struggling with schizophrenia or like severe treatment resistant depression. And I just don't feel like I can relate to them. And, like just kind of varying degrees of people's acuteness, like how their illness was affecting them. And so she just felt like she couldn't really relate, right? So she never went back. And I kind of always had this idea in my head of like, "Ugh, I wish that I could create a program for her, right? That would be more successful, that she could have had more success with. And like she's doing great now and her and I figured it out and we did our weekly sessions, but like I just think about how accelerated that could have been if a place like Lightwork had existed at the time. So
Yeah.
she was sort of like the inspiration coupled with this idea that had been presented to us. Plus, Molly and I were also just kind of feeling like people were craving group stuff, like women, especially. I think we've been sitting in circle together for thousands of years. I say this like every time I speak, and it's just true, right? Like like when you hold retreats, like it's women sitting in circle, women sitting in community together, and it's so powerful, and we seek it, like we want that, and there's only Molly and I started to feel like there's only so much we could do with clients individually, and take them so far that a lot of these women, we would be feeling like, "Ah, I wish I could connect so and so with so and so. I wish I could get these two clients together somehow because I think they'd really connect on their what they have going on." And so we started to do some group stuff. We partnered with some yoga workshops, yoga studios, and did some workshops with them. We did some therapeutic hikes. Like we were just doing these group community events, like almost like a mini version of what Lightwork does now. And they would sell out super quick, and people loved them. We got really good feedback on it. So that's like the very brief but like long-winded way of how Lightwork was born. If we're like, we need this. This needs to exist. And we were
Yeah.
the first women's only program like ours in the state. So there was no women's only sole standalone programs. I think a couple of the hospitals had like women's only tracks, but not really geared towards fully by women for women, which is what we are. Our whole staff identifies as
I
female.
know I loved your Halloween post with all the
Yes,
that was cool.
we
No,
love
good.
Halloween.
There's like so many things that I want to dig into of
Yes,
what you said. And so for starters, I can completely relate to the fact that there is, if you can't see yourself or your issues in the group that you're in, then you feel like maybe this isn't the right path for me, or maybe sobriety isn't the right path for me. And I've
right.
actually had clients who have come from like inpatient to like day treatments and stuff, and it has been they're like, I just don't connect to like the level of issues these people are having, and I
Yep.
don't feel like I can't relate. And it makes total sense. And I think even with sober curiosity, this like growing thing, a growing space of like gray area drinkers to explore their drinking, I think that is so important because people have to be able to like relate to the approach and see
Yeah,
themselves and kind of feel like the space is fitting to their individuality. And
totally.
and I think sometimes what I've heard from women who come to sober curious sister circles is like, yeah, I've kind of been questioning my relationship to alcohol, but like I don't identify as an alcoholic, so I would
Mhm.
never go to AA, but this is creating this space for me to explore it more proactively, and maybe I wouldn't have if like AA was the only option. And so creating more customized like approaches for people to
Totally.
explore their unique issues with other people who have those same unique issues in the same like area of the spectrum is so helpful. And then when you were talking about like the high achieving piece, I think that's so true too. One common theme I hear amongst women is just like the perfectionist attitude and like
Hmm.
harsh critical dialogue and like pushing
Yeah.
themselves and pushing themselves and just it's like what an exhausting brain to live in, and we don't even realize that we're doing that to ourselves.
Hmm.
And and the other thing is the deep feeling overlap. And I wanted to dig into that because one thing I've really developed in my own practice is recognizing that there is a lot of us who are deep feelers. And
Totally.
uh, I wanted to hear about your opinion on this actually, because I posted about high sensitivity on out on a
Mhm.
algorithm on TikTok. And a lot of
An
people,
algorithm there.
yeah, there's an algorithm there. It's a
Yeah.
little creepy, honestly. Sometimes you're like, what the? Um,
Yeah.
but I posted about high sensitivity, and I know there's a lot of overlap with like high sensitivity, hypervigilance, and even, being on the spectrum. And so how do you see that sort of like deep feeling nature in your clients who self-medicate with alcohol? Do you feel that's a common trait in a lot of the women that come through your doors? And how do you differentiate between like hypervigilance, high sensitivity, being on the spectrum, a little bit of everything? What's your
Yeah.
take on that?
Yeah, totally. It's a great question. And it's so, obviously we are an insurance-based program, so we have to diagnose people in order to bill their insurance. But I'm like definitely a firm believer in you can be all of those things, or like there's
Middle
like
of one is
pieces.
not another. Yeah.
Yeah, and like all of that connects. But to answer kind of the base of your question, like yes, I totally see most people, and I would say just even if women come through our program who aren't, yes, necessarily self-medicating with alcohol, but it could be other things, right? Like shopping or phone scrolling or TV or Netflix. Like these are all ways that we numb and cope, right? And some of them are have more negative health impacts than others, or more immediate negative health impacts than others, like drinking or using drugs. But they all are sort of rooted in the same thing that we're so overloaded with information and feelings and all of this stuff baseline in our society, right? And like there's a ton of talks out there like this, so I don't need to like dive too deep into this thing, but right, like our brains have not from a neuroscience perspective, our brains have not caught up evolutionarily to our current technology, right? Like we're still several generations behind in terms of what our brains can compute, right? So we still have a lot of like very caveman or cavewoman like tendencies where, our brain is responding to things as if they were life-threatening that are not, right? Like there's a common example that we see in psychology of like you get an email, a nasty email from your boss or like a stressed out email from your boss and your brain is reacting to it in the same way that we would have if, a tiger was chasing us as a cave person, you know what I mean? Like where in those situations back then, we were running or fighting for our lives, right? We talk about fight or flight as like that's what it literally is. It's to fight to the death, like to fight for your life or to flee for your life. So when we're having this response, but like I'm sitting at my desk at work, there's nowhere for that energy to go, right? Like all of those hormones that are getting pumped through you are meant to help you fight an assailant, right? Like a life-threatening assailant, or run from a life-threatening threat. Um, and that's where that energy would get expelled, and that's where you can like relax. We don't have that now. So we're just like sitting in this like constant state of anxiety all the time. And then like I think a lot of times that turns into like chronic depression and women in particular, and this is a very huge blanket statement, but like I think that we are a little bit more emotionally sensitive or can be a little bit more emotionally tuned into ourselves and particularly other people. Whether that's like a biology thing or a societal thing, I don't know. I'm not a neuroscientist. I can't say definitively. It's probably a little bit of both, right? But we're kind of like brought up to put others before ourselves as women, right? And like kind of if we think about traditional gender roles. So the women that come through light work and even clients that I saw prior to this, and even just talking with myself and friends and other women that I connect with, we all have this kind of extra layer, let's say, of kind of sensitivity, I think that lends itself really well to if we don't have a great foundation and basis for emotion regulation and like how to cope when stressors come in. If no one teaches us that, or we don't have that, or we're not practicing it on a daily basis, we're like super prone to some of those
Yeah.
things that are much easier to reach for, like pouring a glass of wine, right? Or scrolling on your phone on TikTok, like you
Yeah,
said,
I talk to my
hours.
clients, I'm
Like,
like, scrolling is not passive. That is just as stimulating and like stressful. Like we feel like we're checking out, but it's not.
yeah.
You notice when you take a minute to scroll and an hour goes by and you're like, I feel so drained.
Yeah. And you're like, where did that time go?
Like,
But
what
it's
happened? Where am I? And I feel
right.
exhausted. Like
But
my
the energetic output to do that, to reach for that as a tool, quote unquote, is so much lower, right, than setting up a meditation practice if you've never done it before, or like getting out a journal and like facing all the scary thoughts and feelings that you're having, writing them all down and then like reading them on paper. Like that requires like a higher level of mental engagement and energy than it does to like pour yourself a drink,
and
right?
willingness to like change the things that are and
Yeah.
address them, it's like
Yeah, face
that
them.
is really hard. And I find for me, one thing when I reflect back is, I do identify as somebody who's pretty sensitive. And I know my mom is more sensitive, and I know
Mhm.
I went through trauma. So whether it's like just, and I've like my whole family is very like deeply intuitive and stuff.
Yeah.
So whether it's a combination of like, being lightly on the spectrum, high
Yeah. Yeah.
sensitivity, deep feeling, or like all of the above, I feel as though people who carry some of those traits like hard to exist in our society. And I
Yes.
read, the highly sensitive person a long time ago, and I remember
Yep.
being like, wow, this really resonates. And
Mhm.
I think pushing that in deep inner knowing down often in favor
Yeah,
of like just trying to fit in with what is going on
totally.
in society, and instead of realizing like, wait a second, maybe you're not meant to fit in. And I talk a lot to clients about how it's like when we actually slow down and create a life that kind of doesn't like cater to our sensitivity, which I think, it's a responsibility and it's a beautiful super trait when we can embrace it in a balanced way. But it's such a beautiful, beautiful trait that we can really allow to shine when we learn to
Totally.
take away the crutches and um, treat it as the gift it is. And I guess for a long time, I wasn't even aware that I wasn't aware that I was more sensitive or anything.
Yeah,
I think I
right.
kind of leaned into like the programming of society, like hyper productivity and really leaning into my masculine and,
Yeah.
you know, gossiping and hanging out with people who were like, let's get drunk and party and do this. And deep
Mhm.
down, I was kind of like, this isn't like, I don't feel right in any
Yeah,
of
it
this, but
sucks. Yeah.
yeah, I'm like, this fucking sucks. Like, what am I?
Yeah,
And now looking back, I'm like, wow, I was just self-abandoning the whole time and like
totally.
venting a lot. And it's like no wonder that I was drinking through that. And um, the other thing too that you had mentioned was recognizing that you actually enjoy entrepreneurship and you're actually
Yeah.
so much more creative than you had initially thought. And literally, I think I talked about it in one of the episodes about how I took an intro to or a business class in college, and I remember being so intrigued by entrepreneurship and the idea of creating my own thing. And I was like, oh,
Yeah.
I can't do that. And
Hmm.
not that creative. And it's just so wild because not only am I extraordinarily creative and I love entrepreneurship and I would
Yeah.
never want to go back to working for someone else again, but I've realized like we're all creative and creativity is like a necessary part of our well-being. And I'm curious to hear more of your thoughts on the role of creativity and reconnecting back to like the spirit of creativity in our healing process or our recovery journey or
Yeah.
sobriety overall? Like, what role do you think that plays?
I think it plays a huge role, like I think creativity is like is just like a form of humanness, that sometimes gets lost on us, like you mentioned, when we live in the society that we live in, right? That like kind of puts emphasis on and values hyperproductivity and, this idea that you got to like grind, 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 and like that's how you get ahead. And like, there's like layers of truth to that, that I think it's like we get into the whole like manifesting and kind of like I'm very woo-woo, so like I love that stuff. But
Yep.
that there's like in that world, we'd call that take inspired action. Or even you said it before I think it was before we started recording, taking messy action, like just doing, like do it, and it doesn't have to be perfect, and I think we struggle with that a lot in society now, especially as women, because there is so much perfectionism that comes up for us and so much fear, right? Like there's that quote, that perfectionism is just fear in a costume. Like it's just this idea that unless I get every single thing perfect, quote unquote perfect, like there's no point in even doing it because like what will people think, or what if I fail, or what if it's not good, right? And that just winds up holding us back. We never wind up doing anything. And so I think like creativity is certainly has to be, I think, part of anyone's process that's healing, whether from substances or exploring their relationship with substances, or healing, it like from in my world, like from, with mental health stuff. And I know from my experience and the experience that I've talked with so many women about, substances, scrolling, all of these things that we're talking about just dull and mute our creativity, because it's like, yes, you are numbing the challenging emotions that you're experiencing too, but like the other side of that coin of those challenging emotions is like this beautiful creativity and opportunity to express and understand how you're feeling, and then turn that into something positive, or just turn that into an expression that other people can resonate with, or that you're like, yeah, this really aligns with my values, right? Like you were kind of alluding to before, where when we're living out of alignment, our actions aren't lining up with like kind of what our gut and our heart is telling us that our values are. How are you gonna how are you gonna be creative or think of anything positive or cool, you know?
Yeah,
Um,
you're just trying to wear the mask and be like,
yeah,
and
you have no
deal,
energy left. Yeah.
yeah, and deal with that suffering of incongruency and cognitive dissonance, and it's so exhausting to be in that space. And I was watching this a therapist on Instagram talking about suffering is pain multiplied by our resistance to it, and it's so
Yep.
true. It's just like we cause ourselves so much more suffering when in reality, if we just let ourselves feel it, not
Yeah,
only is it like so releasing and liberating, but there is a lot of creativity that through
totally.
comes as a byproduct of moving through pain and inspiration, and just it's a beautiful process, and it allows us to not only fulfill our deeper meaning and purpose, but to connect with each other, which
Yeah.
leads into spirituality and
Hmm.
our interconnected nature too. And I'm curious too about that. I'm curious
It's good. Let's be
about,
curious.
yeah, curious is a good word. One of my favorites, in fact, but
Yeah.
how do you introduce spirituality or encouraging? Is that a piece of the work you do with clients? I know it's a big piece of AA to
Yes.
create your own understanding of your faith and
Yep.
that connection to something greater. And I certainly think that's a really big part of that's missing in our society and why so
Hmm.
many people are just so disconnected from themselves. And I think creativity and spirituality actually have a really big overlap with each other.
Totally.
So tell me
Yeah, I
about that.
I I totally agree with you, Katie. And it's kind of one of those things where I hope no one from the insurance companies listens to this, but like you can't bill for spirituality. And it's kind of sad because
That's
I
the
think
pride.
so. Yeah, I know. So we sneak it in our program, like in ways that are, because light work, we do kind of frame ourselves as a holistic model, and that is what we try to do because I totally agree with you. Like these elements of creativity and like some form of spirituality, it doesn't need to be religion, right? It doesn't need to be a specific set. If that works for you, awesome, like cool, like I think I'm personally of the I don't know, I'm like all over the place. It's all
I think I'm like
interconnected.
mysticism is my
Yeah, like
exploration.
there's something I don't know. None of us really like I'm just kind of like whatever it is beyond our understanding of
And
like
I just want to
anything.
be in
Like
alignment with it. That's all.
yeah, like as long as it feels good and works. But
Yeah.
in AA, there's that kind of thing of like giving it over to somebody or something else, right? Like something greater than yourself. And that doesn't even need to be like a deity or a god or this, but just like a lot of times with clients, I think that struggle sometimes with this idea of religion or maybe have had like a traumatic experience in religion, like through, we were talking about this before we got on too, but like before, like they were in a cult or like had some kind of these experiences or just like negative
Just the
experiences with the church or whatever, right?
like the
Um,
dogma, and every church is
yeah,
so different, and so it's like really
totally.
I've done a circle on, spirituality before, and a lot of people bring up like I just didn't resonate, and so then they kind of go away from it altogether, and it's like any man-made system has the potential for oppression and abuse, and you know
Right.
I'm sure there's like manipulation within the Bible, and but then
Yeah.
there's also great messages as well.
Totally.
So uh,
Yeah, nothing's perfect. And I think like it can just be as simple as like believing in our ability to connect as humans, right? Or are connecting with doing good for others, right? Like even things like that can be spiritual. Like it doesn't have to be this like I sit at an altar and pray. And I think people get like kind of stuck on that. And so we try to at Lightwork incorporate it into different ways that are both like therapeutically tested and work, evidence-based practices, but also like allow the space for people to explore that side. So at Lightwork, like we have music therapy, we have art therapy, we have we do have someone, who comes in our Woburn office to do kind of like more spiritual element of things where we're either doing like deeply meditative practices to focus on mindfulness, right? And sit in that discomfort and work through it, or Reiki, or giving people just the space to explore like what does spirituality mean to you? How does it relate to what you're trying to work on, whether it's drinking or substances or just anxiety, right? Like how can these things be helpful to you? And I think when people are able to find something that they can connect with and resonate with, it totally opens the door for them to like be more creative for me, like I'm a big universe girly where like and for me I call it prayer, but I'm not necessarily like reading scripture or like praying to a specific thing. I'm just like talking kind of to myself out loud and like asking whoever's listening to just like help give me strength or like kind of help like talk me through this. And for me, like the thought of giving it to somebody else, to something else, like right to like this kind of great unknown brings me a lot of relief. I don't really care if people think that's stupid or if it's like that's not real or it's not scientifically proven. Like for me, it doesn't matter because it works. So I think for people's spirituality, that if folks can kind of get to a place with it where it's like, if it helps, it helps. Like, does it
Yeah.
matter if it's like scientifically proven?
Yeah.
Like
I
you
know.
can't see the wind, but you can feel it?
Yeah, I think that there is, it's funny, I went to a Christian school until I was in sixth grade, not necessarily because my family was particularly religious. My mom was just like, oh, the public school sucks and this is like a nice Christian
Yeah, it's
school.
private.
Yeah, it's private and it was very like not hellfire and brimstones. It was
Yeah.
like God, Jesus, we love everyone,
Yeah.
Christianity. And so I had a good experience with that, but I've never felt like inclined to be super religious in any way. Like I
Yeah.
believe in Christ consciousness and the messages of that, but also this idea of spirituality where we can achieve our own relationship with divine intelligence. And I think one thing I've seen a common thread of is people taking issue with the word like surrender, particularly in
Mm.
AA, like, oh, surrender, it's oppressive. I don't want to surrender to something. And I've already surrendered enough. And what I've experienced in my own life is that, as someone who's been driven by being hyperprotective and like a control freak in my own life, I think there is some element of peace when you decide that you aren't doing it alone and you focus on inner alignment, but also know that there's a divine intelligence, a co-creation with something greater than yourself that you can not surrender like, okay, life isn't mine, go ahead. It's like, no,
Right.
we take aligned action in conjunction with this idea that there is something greater that
Yeah.
should have a plan far better for us beyond our own. Wouldn't you want to be open to those possibilities, or do you want to go through life thinking that like you are the only force that can make your life happen in every possible capacity? And I think that's just as oppressive as saying like I'm going to surrender like 50% to this like divine
Totally.
intelligence that created the earth that we're living on and the universe beyond. Because seems like, when I look at nature, I think they might have some
Yeah.
like
There's
whatever
something.
it is, might be
Yeah.
onto something.
Yeah.
There's a quote, a biblical quote that I think of often, and I don't read the Bible or anything
Yeah.
either,
Yeah.
really. But it's like you will know them by their fruit. And I think that is something that resonates to me is like you don't have to subscribe to like my version of faith, but like my life is an example of what I'm subscribing to.
Yeah.
And I think same thing for you, your path of recovery and the beautiful light literally that you're creating in the world. It's like something's working. And if
Yeah.
it's a part of that, then it might be cool to explore and just I think of spirituality not just as a connection to something beyond, but and I use words like source, God, divine intelligence, the universe interchangeably.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I think of it as a relationship, yeah, with something greater than ourselves, but also a relationship to our interconnectedness with each other
Right.
and our connection to our contribution to the world and like our life force and what our energy is like, how it's most productively expended in the world that's like fulfilling to us, but enhancing the world around us. And so to me that feels like a beautiful belief system it and it's up to everyone to kind of develop what feels best to them too, but there is a lot of beauty in kind of figuring out what that is.
Yeah, totally. It's like, I think baseline again, like sometimes when I spot talk with clients or when, our clinicians talk with clients who do kind of struggle with the spirituality piece, it's like, I think of it as like it's just an openness, right? It's like just trying to be open to other possibilities, right? And I think when you're healing or recovering from anything, but particularly substance use or mental, mental health stuff, it can be like being able to be open to the possibility of life being different or you having more strength in community, right? It's like, so for us at Lightwork, you're coming to group because you're drawing strength from your community. It's like that in and of itself can be spiritual, right? Like the feeling of interconnectedness with the other women in group doesn't have anything to do, right, with like a specific God or a specific set of beliefs, but like you can feel that connection, and like that is spiritual, right? And that can be so helpful. Like I think that's why this level of care for us is we've seen it be so effective and so helpful is because of that community aspect, right? And like with AA, to your point too, I think I love how like I AA was helpful for me. It did. I'm not an active participant in AA anymore. But when I was getting sober, it did help me quite a bit.
Hmm.
But I love how there's so many more options out there now, right? Like for people to explore their connection to these things in a way that maybe is like aligned in a different way spiritually, like coming to like an exploration circle with you, to think about these concepts in a way that's not um kind of just what's been done in the
One
past.
size fits all sort of thing. And what
Yeah.
I really loved about creating these spaces here is that there's women and my mom, I know it's anonymous, but we've talked about it on the podcast.
You have her permission.
Like
Yeah.
I'm not blowing up her spot or anything. Hi, mom. But she did AAs and I even went to meetings with her. Like that wasn't the route I took myself because even when I first stopped drinking, I wasn't even thinking I was never going to drink again.
Mm.
It was
Hmm.
an unfolding that happened through how beautiful my life started to become
Yeah.
and just more and more positively reinforcing. And I always say, like, I think AA is friggin' awesome. And that, like, I'm so glad it's an option. And what's really been cool with the circles that I do here is that there is women from AA who come and
Yeah.
they're just like, cool, I want to like find another sober activity. And
Totally.
there's women who are like, I'm just trying to drink less. And those women who are just trying to drink less or on the gray area, they get to hear this wisdom from people who have been in years and years and years of recovery that like they'd never go to an AA meeting. So it's like that cross pollination of like wisdom between people who would never like be in an AA room together is so cool. And so that's been really fulfilling about like the circles where it's like a little more open to different paths, is that we have different paths crossing and people getting to share their experiences. And so I find that's been really, really cool to watch. And yeah.
Yeah, yeah. We
Uh,
have at Lightwork too, like we have our evening programming. So we have like a nighttime track for folks who maybe are working and aren't able to take leave from work and come to like a day treatment program, right, where they can come sit from 9 to noon. And just aren't in a position to do that. So we have evening programming for those folks. And that track is our dual diagnosis, our co-occurring track that treats both mental health and substance use. And what that's actually wound up we've kind of like it's been so cool. Like we've kind of carved out this niche that we're not like a traditional substance use program that utilizes 12 step or which most substance use programs do. Um, we don't do that at all. We do kind of mostly mental health based curriculum that has education and a lot of emphasis on coping skills and alternative, ability like tools to use to help manage substances or whatever you're working on. So we've kind of carved out this kind of cool um, group where women are often coming to that wanting to explore their relationship to substances versus coming in as like I'm sober and I'm here to like
yeah.
continue my sobriety and work on that, or like I just and we do have some women that are like that do identify that way or have come from an alcohol program or a substance use program and want to focus that work, but it's kind of this cool in between where people can do both, and it's
I love that.
it's been nice to kind of, to your point, like meet people where they're at with it and provide them that space that it like, yeah, it's okay to like not be sure yet, right? Of course, there's clinical indications where if someone is
You should
really,
be here.
yeah, where we're like, okay, I think
Emergency
we
and
might need a little more help here. But for
yeah, yeah.
many women, probably a lot of your listeners of kind of this big, like the sober curiosity movement of like, what role is my nightly glass of wine serving me or my three nightly glasses of wine serving me, right? Or like, what do I need to smoke weed every night to sleep? Like, is that
I
what's
just went
that?
through this myself.
Yeah.
Like, oh my gosh, because I was never, it's so funny you said that because I literally was just posting about this on my story because I was never like weed wasn't really my drug of choice at all. And
Yeah.
so when I stopped drinking, I wasn't like, I'm never smoking weed again. Like I just it was
Right.
there. I wasn't it was I had no charge with it really. Um and my focus was always just, sober curiosities to explore, predominantly a relationship with alcohol. But I feel as though it's a spirit that we apply to our lives, even outside of substances, just like, what is
Totally.
serving me? Like, where am I in denial about programs that I'm carrying forward that just aren't working? And so I was like really scared to share about it because my perfectionism and me being like, I'm a sober curious coach. I'm going to tell people that I was using cannabis like to sleep. And so anyways, I have had years of my alcohol-free journey where
Yep.
I haven't used weed or cannabis at all. But then after I had my son, I had like so much insomnia
Hmm.
and I started giving myself permission to use it to sleep. And it was like this wave just over the past 6 months where I'm like, I got to get this out of here. Like, I just don't want, it doesn't feel in my integrity with the work I'm doing, but it also doesn't feel like I just want clear energy. And it's funny because I
Yep.
have a question here on clear energy that will segue into nicely from here. But I just know, and it like, you talk to other people, they're like, it's not that big of a deal. Like, even with drinking, people will say the same thing. It's not that big. You're not that bad. Like, you just use it a little bit to sleep or this or that. And I'm like, but that's
Yeah.
not me. Like, I'm sensitive. I can't be like out of alignment like that. Like, I just have had so much evidence in my life that when I am in clear energy, manifestation is like,
Mhm.
electric, and it's just the magnetism in your life and the realities you can create. So it's like, yeah, I think a lot of people sell themselves short with being like, I'm functioning, it's fine, it's not that bad. But it's like, that doesn't work for me. Like, I even cut out coffee too, because I was like noticing I would like
Yeah.
smoke or use THC to sleep. And then I would wake up and drink a bunch of coffee and I'm like feeling anxious. And I'm like, no, like this just gotta
Right.
go. I took it out, both like cold turkey. I was like, this out of here, like needs to
Yeah. Yeah.
go. Cried for like 3 days. My dreams
I
came
was gonna
back.
say,
I
how is
feel
that
great.
detox?
I feel great. And it's
A
like,
little at home detox. The
yeah,
coffee
I
detox.
was like,
Brutal.
yeah,
Yeah.
the coffee. I know it's funny. It wasn't too bad. I took it out like a month
Good.
and a half ago or something, but
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, it was just like, it's just always just being open to like exploring what we're doing and being like, why, like, I never want to have to rely on anything outside of myself to be functioning. And I just know the beauty of clear energy and the magnetism of it and the guidance of it. And so, yeah, speaking of clear energy, meanwhile, I did share on my story, like, I've been like fully sober for a long, long periods of time, but I started using weed to sleep and I took it out. And so many people were like, oh my God, like, thank you for sharing. And it's just, you get in your head, people are going to judge you, but it's like, no, like people are imperfect and you want to see people who are living in their integrity and talking about it, not people who are pretending like
Yeah.
I'm perfect and I have nothing to work on.
Yeah. I have it all figured out. I'm good.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And that's been a big piece for me, just positioning myself as like, this is my area of expertise to like, I don't know. I've really been working on that, like not feeling the need to like, I'm a Virgo, I'm like a perfectionist, like some of these things that I've seen patterns in my
Mhm.
life where it's like, I feel like I need to know everything. It's like just surrendering, like you have great wisdom to share. You don't have to be perfect to share it or help people. And you can
Yeah.
be healing yourself as you're guiding others too. And being honest about that. And it's so liberating to do that. And so, yeah, what is your take on the beauty of just like clear, unadulterated energy and what role like weed, caffeine, alcohol, like all those things play in
Yeah.
our ability to manifest?
Yeah. Totally.
Boo,
Well,
boo.
yeah, so much of what you just said like resonates, I think, for so many people. And like I struggle with that stuff too. Like even now, like I'm trying to do more, speaking and coming on awesome podcasts like yours and just kind of like talking, sharing a little bit more about my story and how it relates to light work so that like more people can know about it and maybe feel inspired to, heal and get help themselves. And that's wicked scary, like for me as someone who's sensitive and, kind of baseline anxious and I unfortunately, as it gets better every year, it gets better. The older I get, I care less, but like I do care what other people think. I think we're all wired to care what other people think. We're a social species. That's we're hardwired to kind of read the room and read the group. And I have ADHD. It's wildly unmanaged because I don't take, medication for it. At this juncture in my life, like I think so much of that like clear energy thing is it's so different for each person, right? And that feels like a little bit of a cop out answer, but I really mean that because I think like what could work, like for me personally, I don't do any substances except for caffeine. I
Mm.
love it. I can't
And
get
I
it.
still drink. I'll drink like matcha, or I
Yeah.
drink like
I'm hitting the coffee. Like
yeah,
I'm doing that.
I like
But
on the caffeine.
yeah, but to your point, like there are times even when I can feel myself like moving out of alignment with that when like I'm slamming 4 or 5 coffees a day. And it might sound like so trivial because I don't know, folks that might be listening might be like, I'm shooting up, dude. Like this girl's talking about t drinking 4 coffees a day, but like I've been there too. I've done all that kind of stuff as well.
Yeah.
And because of having those experiences, it's almost easier now for me to tell because I'm 86% of the time in alignment with myself that like because my energy is clear because it's not clouded by alcohol or for me marijuana has never been my thing. I think it can be a clouder. I know that for lots of people it's like helped them for lots of different situations. For me personally in my experience, it doesn't help me.
Mm.
Um in fact it always made me more anxious, so I might just
You're
be
like,
one of
don't
those
need any
people.
more anxiety.
Everyone's like it's different now. I'm like I'm not gonna try.
You're like,
Like
yeah, different because it's like stronger and makes you like
and
comatose.
maybe that's true, but like I know for me and my personal experience, like I'm not willing to give it a go. Like I
Wow.
know that what I'm doing now feels good and works for me, so I'm not willing to like test that theory for myself personally. But I think like the more centered we can be and like to your point, the more our actions align with our values. Like so for the coffee thing, for example, because I'm pretty tuned into my own energy at this point and it's not clouded by other things when even if I'm like I can notice with more ease that I'm hitting the coffee a little too hard, like when I'm slamming 3 o'clock, espressos quads, I'm like, this do I need this? Or am I just trying to feel something? Or do I just kind of let because I definitely am an addict, like I believe that. So it's like I have ADHD, right? So I get that like hyperfixation on
Yeah.
stuff and I want more and
Impulsivity
more.
too. Like, well, I'm just gonna do
Totally.
it.
Yeah. So then I'm like, but because I have mostly clear energy, like I said, we'll ballpark it around 86% of the time, I can read that in myself and realize like tuning into my body. Like those are things that I never did when I was drinking because I didn't want to. I didn't want to feel. I didn't want to tune into how I was feeling because how I felt shitty and I knew that. So I didn't want
Yeah.
to feel it. Hence the drinking, right? And smoking weed and the doing whatever else I was doing, whatever I could really get my hands on, frankly. Like that and I still baseline seek that, right? Like I still seek that relief is like my kind of first reaction is I'm like, oh, I wish I could, take an Ativan and move on with my life. But like that doesn't work for me because then by next week I'd be taking 6 Ativan a day and calling my doctor and doctor shopping, and then my life becomes like out of control, right? So doing things like for me, especially with having ADHD, knowing I get this kind of I can run with things pretty
It'll
easily.
like give an inch
Yeah, like
mile, up we go.
yeah, like my brain's like, wouldn't be that bad. Like, right? It's like, no. For
What's wrong
me,
with 6 out of a day anyways?
yeah, like other than having no memory and then having a wild mood swings, like,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
abusing the people around you. Other than that, it's fine. Like that type of stuff, luckily, because I have, several years under my belt now of having this experience, I have the ability to kind of zoom out even in those difficult moments and be like, overall, let me look around at my life, like even right now, I'm coming to you, this my background's blurred, but I'm in my basement office that like we had redone and like I wouldn't have had like the mental wherewithal to like even find and hire a contractor, let alone the funds to pay said contractor if I was still drinking because I would be so caught up in my own like lies and just stuff like that. So
Yeah.
like I look around at my life, right? And I'm like everything every part of my life is better because I don't use substances,
Yeah.
period. So if I can connect to that, it helps me be able to say, like, okay, why do I kind of feel weird right now? Why do I feel shitty? Like, why am I feeling like that itch or that ickiness? Like, what's
What am
going
I
on in
eating?
my life that maybe I'm out of alignment with? And then I can usually identify it. And usually it's like, yeah, the coffee's like a small thing, but like, or it's, I have an extra, for me, exercise is very important. I'm like a high energy, high thinking person. I need to like kind of burn that off, even if it's just a walk outside, right? Like it's usually that I haven't exercised like hardly at all. Maybe I'm eating foods that don't really feel nourishing or don't have like a lot of, health benefits, or I'm not eating enough, right? Like, because with my ADHD too, sometimes like I forget to eat and then it's like I'm starving and then I'm crashing because like my blood sugar has crashed and I'm like, oh, why do I? And then, but I've had 5 coffees. It's like, well, hello, you're not like
Yeah.
taking care of your basic needs. And then I'm not perfect with this by any means, but I do try to have some, and I say this to clients a lot, some form of a daily practice that is meditative or reflective in some way, right? So it doesn't need to be like lighting sage and journaling for an hour. That's fucking awesome. If you can do that, and sometimes I do, and I'm like, oh, I'm like the picture of health, like
Yeah.
put me on the poster for a green smoothie. Like I'm so healthy. Like I journaled,
Yeah.
If I can do that, awesome. Sometimes I can't or I don't, I don't have the energy or I'm busy or forget a lot of times. But
Mhm.
if I can even just take like 10 minutes as I'm closing my eyes at night and falling asleep instead of like scrolling on my phone, like I'll try to put my phone down and just like run through the day, like run through kind of like my gratitude, what was good about my day, what do I want to kind of do better tomorrow, not in like a beating myself up way, but just kind of again like
A
reflecting
reflective.
on the
Yeah.
alignment piece, and asking for me my version of my spiritual stuff, asking for strength or asking for help or clarity on certain things. And kind of that's like my little nightly ritual that I do that's like reflective in nature. And it brings me a lot of peace and it helps me feel super grounded. And so I think everyone's version of that can vary, but that's definitely something for me that has been like achievable
Yeah.
and I don't feel pressured to do it. Like I think in the past I've definitely been one of those people, especially before I got sober. Like I can't tell you how many fucking yoga retreats and like juice cleanses and like oh I would do anything to like
Yeah. Except cut out
heal
alcohol.
myself except stop drinking, right? So it's like I've done
Same.
all that stuff. And there's value to it. Like I did get good things out of those moments, but like I don't know, like sometimes that whole slow morning routine, that's not how I am, at least at this point in my life. I'm kind of running and gunning and I'm doing I'm going
Yeah.
to work and like whatever. So for me it's nighttime and I think for folks I would just like encourage them to kind of find their version of that and
Yeah.
have it be realistic. It doesn't have to be this like whole big
Yeah.
thing, you know?
I totally agree. And I feel it's the same thing, right? It's like, oh, if I can't do that, then I'm not going to do it at all. And one thing I say all the time is like, it can just be micro moments. It can be a spirit of
Yes.
mindfulness carried throughout your day. It can be
Yeah.
monotasking where you're not like listening to a podcast while you do the dishes and
Yeah.
doing
Yeah.
the dishes or just going on
Totally.
a walk, like one thing at a time. And what you were saying too about just gaining this, enhanced clarity and connection to your body.
Mm.
I notice that so much because even one thing, and I don't know if you notice this as well, but a lot of times I find when clients give up alcohol, like all of a sudden they have a chronic health issue or like some health issue they never realized. And they're like, what happened? Like, I got sober. I thought I was going to be healthy. I'm like, well, this was probably here.
Yeah, you just didn't feel it.
Yeah, and so just emphasizing, like I'm big on interoception and like tuning into like
Yeah.
how is your body feeling? And I just don't think we do that enough. Like we bypass a connection to our body in so many ways and just forge ahead. And I think that's, as you continue to start paying attention to how foods make you feel, how drinks make you feel, how the weeds affecting your energy, how the coffee is like impacting you when you have too much. And all that stuff, like the more you start paying attention, then the more like, and if you, and for me, I know I am a little more leaning towards the more sensitive side. So it's like
Right.
everyone has to understand like that process of self-discovery and self-awareness and exploration. Like, what is my baseline and how are these things feeling for me? And that's like a very individualized process and finding what works for you. And just like our intuition, the more we tune in, the stronger it
Yeah,
gets. And I think the same thing with understanding the language of our body and becoming fluent in the ability to introspect and develop our interoception and understand the language of our bodies. And like, okay, I've been doing this for 10 years, drinking like I used to chug, I would get like large, like ice, huge, like cold brews,
yeah,
chug them down, be like, why do I have a sense of urgency all day? It's like, Katie,
yeah,
you had like five cold brews today. Like,
yeah.
what do you think?
And you didn't eat. Yeah, like
You need, and like, you're a psycho. So it's just like, that ability to just slow down and tune into what works for us. And I really try to share vulnerably, like with people and allow space for them to find their own path because it's, we're all different and we're at different levels of our journey, self-awareness and everything. And one size doesn't fit all, which is so cool that there's like all these paths to recovery
totally.
and healing unfolding. So,
Yeah.
wow.
And like people's ability, like and more things becoming available for people to like explore whatever, like explore their relationship with substances, explore themselves, like hold space for themselves. Like I love sound baths. Like I think those are great because like you're just laying there, there's nothing to do but listen. It's like you can't help but kind of tune into your body in that moment. And like almost everyone I know that has experienced one of those comes out feeling better, right? Because it's like you just took a moment to like slow down and stop and just even things like that, right, are great tools that we can use to explore that side of things for ourselves because we're just all so like used to just go, 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 go. And it kind of ties back to what I was saying when we first started chatting about kind of this like high functioning anxiety, high functioning burnout, high functioning depression, especially amongst women. Like we we disconnect from ourselves so that we're able to get all the things done, right? But like what we don't realize and we don't always often have support on unless we find it, right, externally usually, is that we actually are going to be capable of doing so much more if we do take a moment to rest or like build in these pockets, like you said, like these micro pockets of like you said, just do one thing at a time. I'm a huge um culprit of this, like where I'm doing like 50 things at once and I have to be like, okay, hang on,
Same.
let me just finish. I'll be in like the middle of responding to an email.
And
I'll
then,
like have a thought
yeah,
and I'll
and
like
then you
click into
see
another
like,
browser.
yeah. And I'm like, wait, I like what? I
Yeah,
think
go back to the email.
yeah,
Just
I
wait.
remember that one very important like aha moment I had even in my health coaching where they're like multitasking isn't the flex you think it is. Just do
It's
one thing at
not.
a time from start to finish and you actually get shit done faster with intentionality and focus and it's like
Totally.
oh my God.
Yeah.
And you can feel your stress. Like I can, for me personally, I can feel the stress lift when I'm like,
Yes.
just do this one thing, focus on this,
Yep.
and then look at your list. Don't be like cross-referencing your list while you're doing this and turning on Real Housewives in the background. Like, what are you
Well,
doing?
definitely don't turn that on if you want any semblance of that's just so funny. Like my husband, not to put him on blast, but like I feel like men low key love like a reality show, even though they pretend they don't.
Like,
But
what are you watching?
yeah, but then they ask you like 4,000 questions. So, anyways, my husband's a big Selling Sunset guy
Oh,
on
yeah, yeah.
Netflix. We're
Yeah.
not a Bravo family, but we do the Netflix reality shows. And even like watching that, yeah, it was yesterday. We were watching it, and I was like, I can't watch this anymore. I was like, I'm getting the stress of these women's conflict. I just want to sit them both down and have a conversation with them and talk it out. I was like, I can't take this. This is my day off. Like,
It's so funny. I
I
have
need to
like
watch the baking show, like, and
yeah,
calm.
'cause I have clients that like the like British ba there's like some
Yes, the
yeah
finale. I watched the finale last night. It was really
I haven't seen it, but I have clients that are really into that show. But it's funny because I have this like very two sides to myself. Like I have the highly sensitive part, but then like I'm just very I love watching interpersonal
yeah.
dynamics and like the drama unfolding. And I'm like, who's at fault? She has like this shit.
Yeah,
It's definitely her problem. And I'm like literally getting stressed while being super fascinated. So
exactly.
it's just like wild. Like what? It's funny. I one of my clients like reluctantly admitted to me that she was like watching Real Housewives of Potomac. Like I was gonna
Yeah.
take her. I'm like, I
Like,
watched
girl, let's
Housewives
discuss.
sometimes,
Yeah.
and I'm like, I know Giselle, okay? I'm just kidding, but it's like, I just try to allow that space where it's like we're all working on ourselves.
Yeah,
We all are multifaceted. Like we're all real human beings. It's okay to be flawed and to do things that we know aren't, the best for us, and
totally.
to just develop that awareness around like, but how can we be most in alignment with the energy we want to feel flowing throughout our lives on a regular basis. And
Yeah.
yeah, I think people are
Like,
craving that kind of like realness, even within their like experts, it's like
totally.
I do feel that things are shifting from a space of like, as opposed to like I'm the expert and like you listen to me, is more like I'm gonna help guide you in the best of my capabilities, but like we really all do have like what we need within, and having some guidance and some can help facilitate that journey that like
Right.
we are capable of on our own.
Yeah,
A
100%.
lot
Yeah.
better with community and guidance.
Yeah, and like that kind of reminds me of what you were saying earlier, what we were talking about earlier with showing up even on like your own social media platform. And like for me, like starting to kind of incorporate some more of that like into onto my social media stuff, like I think it can be really scary, but and like people I think you had said like, you're afraid like people will judge you and like they will, but like that's okay. Like they'll just like unfollow us and like move on to somebody else or like whatever. You know what I mean? Like I think I know, and most people I talk to, when they do have um, listen to things or hear things or watch things that people are being real and vulnerable and honest, it like resonates so much more, right? Versus what you're saying, like this, like, I'm the expert and here's what you should do. Like, I think I see that a lot, especially with our younger clients. It's definitely like starting to evolve, I think, but like this kind of like the that girl mentality, like wellness girly, like does Pilates, drinks her green juice. And like I even had a client one time say to me, I'm doing all of that. I'm going to Pilates, I'm drinking green juice, I'm juicing, I'm doing the things, I'm journaling, and I still don't feel any better. And I'm like, well, yeah, because like you have like all this shit going on in the background that you need to like talk through and address, and we need to like kind of rewire your coping mechanisms. But I think that's starting to change where people are showing up more authentically online and like showing their vulnerability. Sometimes I'm like, all right,
A
let's,
lot. Yeah.
yeah,
Too much
but
is too much of a good thing.
yeah, like, but it is about the balance, I think, of just knowing that like, and it's okay to like want to consume content that's like wellness based and like positive in that regard, and know that it's okay in understanding that those people struggle too because they're people, and it's not like we're all imperfect, especially with women, like even like our menstrual cycle, like there's like hormones and those fluctuates, like our energy levels, and I think we beat ourselves up because oh, I like peed hard in the gym last week and now this week I can't lift anything. It's like, well, it's luteal, like you're not going to be able to lift anything, like there's so much out there that we could learn about and understand ourselves more, but I think the like what we're kind of saying here is like baseline, if you can just do one thing, it's to like pause a little bit more and slow down a little bit so that you can tune into yourself and know that when you're utilizing, like for example, watching Housewives, or for me, like last night, watching Selling Sunset, like having the awareness to tune into myself to realize like this was fun at the first episode, but now three in, I'm starting to feel icky and I need to switch it up.
Dysregulated. Yeah.
Yeah, like, and it's
Yeah.
okay.
And
Like,
you
I
should
can
feel
still
that way
watch.
even binging like anything where you're like,
Yeah,
okay, like I've been rotting on the couch long
yeah.
enough.
I
Need
need
to
to
get
maybe
up.
like,
Go
yeah,
for a little fresh air break. It's like just
have a
find
drink of
that.
water, perhaps. Yeah,
Yeah, and I think like we're coming to this time where we've like oscillated between extremes so
yeah,
often. People are just getting so sick of that. And it's like just be who you need to be. There's a lot of beauty in the middle of like there's so much beauty in the wellness space and stuff, but that can get extreme and toxic, and just like
yeah.
everything
Like
else.
anything. Yeah,
Inner authority and outer authority have to have a balance, like, between
totally.
what works for you and what you're consuming. And there's a lot of like overconsumption and not enough integration, but that's like a whole nother.
Yes, we could do a whole other episode on that. Yeah, yeah.
Stop
But it is,
listening to podcasts and go.
yeah,
I'm like, even I was talking to a client the other day. I'm like, you should monotest. No more podcasts, just mine. And I was
Yeah.
obviously joking, but it's like true. It's like even self-help material. It's like you can do too much and
Yeah.
not
Well,
enough.
it starts to feel like pressure, right? And I think there's so much of that, where a lot of times we'll say to clients at Lightwork, right? Like, I use this bowling analogy a lot, which probably is, I should probably come up with a new one, but it's like, you're the bowling ball, right? And like you're heading towards the pins, and that's like your journey, right? Is like going down the bowling alley. And like sometimes we veer off, right? Like we're gonna like move off to the side and get a little sidetracked by something, either going to one extreme of like being kind of too controlling of ourselves with our health or like letting it totally slip, right? But like you have bumpers in place,
I use
right?
the bumper analogy in my own.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
the bumpers are like your good shit, right? Like your community, your friends, like people that are helpful to you, your coping skills, right? Like your routines or a few things that make you feel better, right? Like for me, like I've named a few, right? Like exercise, like my night thing, right? So it's like I can notice if I'm starting to verge off, like have I utilized my bumpers at all, or am I like just going into the gutter?
It's like
And
off
I
I go.
remember, yeah, oh yeah, like I can talk to my therapist about this, or I can talk to my husband about this, or I can go for a walk outside and then take a nice shower and like that's gonna help me feel better. I can do some journaling, like boom, bumper goes up, right? And then I'm back on track. So I
Yeah,
think if we think about life like that, it's like,
I love
yeah,
it.
we're gonna be all over the place. That's okay. Throw
Yeah.
up your bumpers and you'll be good. You just got to figure out what your bumpers are,
Exactly.
you know?
That's a perfect way to
Yeah.
close our podcast. And I wanted to end on this question. Looking ahead, what's your vision for the future of women's recovery and wellness with light work and just like the greater landscape? And then obviously share like where people can find you on Instagram,
Yeah.
website, all that stuff.
Yeah, yeah. I think simply just more. I think more. I'm a huge proponent of like women's only spaces and kind of having the ability to connect with one another on certain things, you know. So I think for the future of recovery, I'd love to see more spaces like ours open. I know for Lightwork in particular, we're about to open our evening track in our Braintree locations. We have two locations in Woburn, Massachusetts and Braintree, Massachusetts, and we're opening our evening track that I discussed earlier in Braintree on December 1st. So that will be like that dual diagnosis, exploring your relationship with substances kind of track. So that's exciting to add that there. And then I think like as we go forward, I would love to incorporate even more kind of like lower level of care, outpatient services that are also align with the holistic stuff, right? That like we don't need to fit into the IOP model because of insurance restrictions, right? So if we could also offer kind of these adjunct ancillary services like acupuncture or like trauma massage or like just yoga classes, like with our trauma yoga certified therapist that works at Lightwork that is like outside of the group setting, right? Just like other ways for people to heal and connect that are good and
Yeah.
like clinically appropriate and that I feel comfortable like sending people
Hmm.
um, to just again like expand what healing can mean and meeting people where they are, right? Of like people aren't ready to join a group 3 to 5 days a week for 3 hours a day. Like maybe they can do a drop-in kind of class situation that we have. Just trying to expand the access to care for people
Yeah.
and spread the message that you don't need to be like at your absolute limit or wit's end to like get
Help.
help.
Or-
It's okay to do it even if you feel pretty good.
Yeah. In
Yeah.
fact, it's a great time to do it to maintain feeling good and
Yeah. And feel
have those
great, maybe.
bumpers in place when you need them.
Exactly. And just get more bumpers. So, yeah, and speaking of bumpers, we share a lot of tips that could be bumpers for you on our Instagram page.
Yeah.
You can find us on Instagram, obviously, at we're lightwork.therapy is our Instagram handle. It's connected to our Facebook page. We have our link tree in there so you can like connect to our website on there. Our website is lightworktr.com. And that's kind of the bulk of where our content lives is on the website and on the Instagram. We're trying to work on our TikTok, but it's like hard to like edit the videos and do all that stuff. It's a lot of work.
I'm on TikTok. I'm like, ugh, that's my unhinged space, and this Instagram
Yeah.
is.
Like a little more polished on Instagram, but
Yeah,
that's kind
exactly.
of the
And I'm
difference in the
gonna.
apps.
Yeah, it is funny. It's different. It's pretty funny to like compare the two and different climates on both. But
Yeah.
well, thank you so much for being here. That was such a fun and like resonant conversation.
Yes, totally. So much fun. I loved
I
it.
loved it. And I'm so glad everyone go follow Lightwork Therapy. Lightwork.
Yep, Lightwork Therapy. And then my Instagram is I need to figure this out, but I don't know how to do it right now. Is underscore Jackie Lightner, just like it is, I'm sure in the show notes, the title or
Okay.
whatever. And I do some speaking stuff, some blogging stuff, some tips, more personal story stuff there. Versus Lightwork is like obviously more
The business.
clinical and yeah,
I love
polished
that.
probably.
Yes. Well,
Yeah.
thank you so much for being here, sharing your wisdom and your voice. And for everyone listening, thank you so much for tuning in. And go ahead and give it a like, share, subscribe if this episode resonates with you.
Yep.
Comment. And thanks for being here, everyone.
Thank you. Thanks
Bye.
for having me, Katie. Thanks.